Welcome back. We hope your stomachs are full and you've gotten to learn a lot of great ideas today. We have just one panel last, and it's a good one. Community Voices on Health Equity. Following the session, we will have closing remarks with special guests, and then, as a reminder, immediately after, we have our City in the Summer Health and Wellness Festival outside. So, I would love to introduce our session's moderator, Sharon Carothers. Sharon is the managing director at Washington, D.C.-based Sensis, a marketing and communications firm where she leads the SensisHealth practice. She has 2 decades of healthcare consulting and leadership positions at the Lewin Group, Truth Initiative, and Booz Allen Hamilton. Sharon offers a rigorous set of health communications, evaluation, and strategy services to public and private sector clients focused on addressing the nation's leading public health problems. Welcome, Sharon. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Great. Well, I'm so glad to be here today. Hello, everyone. That lunch was good. I had the ham with the peanut butter cookie. Come on, one of my favorites. I was very happy about that. It's been such a pleasure to be here, and I just can't wait to unpack what is health equity? How do we define it? What does it look like? How do you measure it? How do we get there? Because Lord knows we need to get there as fast as possible. And this, my esteemed colleagues here are going to talk about that today. Before we do that, we're going to dive right in. I do want to remind those, this is not, though, a shy audience. There are cards if you want to write questions, write notes, comments, and hand them to me. I'd be happy to take those. We are going to probably go through, if it works for everyone, some set of questions, and then the last 15 or so minutes, make sure we have plenty of time to answer questions from the audience. So I think that, and if someone has a pressing issue, just raise your hand, no problem. All right? So that's how we're going to roll, and here we go. So I just realized you all have microphones, because I would like you all to introduce yourself. A little twist, and I'm going to start with you, Eddie. Who you are, your role, and then I went why you got into this work, and the best for last, what was your very first job?
Very first job was...
You can start any order.
I'll start in that order. I was 14 working at a Mexican bakery. And you can tell it still works. Second question was, what am I doing now? I'm a chaplain with a large company here in San Antonio. We have over 250 employees, people making from $17 an hour to over 6 figures a year. And we have a bit of everything, including immigrants and or migrants, and we have people from all over the United States that work there. So it's a very interesting place to work, and I thoroughly enjoy it. We have all kinds of issues coming up, and so we see that it doesn't matter how much money you make or don't, people all have issues. So I get to deal with that every day. What else do you need me to say?
Oh, I have a lot of other questions.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Eddie, very much.
Is it on already? Hello. Hi. I'm Jovanna Lopez. I am the Urban Agriculture Community Coordinator at Centro Garcia Street Farm. I will say what my first job was. I worked as a waitress at what is now Viva, what is it called on Nogalitos? Viva Vejeria, which has like turned into many restaurants because I grew up in that neighborhood. It was an Italian restaurant named Sonny's, and I worked there for the first time ever, 14. And then I got into this work. I don't know, I just ended up in this work, really. Like, I think I've always really been a CHW in my heart. When I moved to New York City to do AmeriCorps, I think that's where I got my first real experience working within communities of color and really seeing firsthand, health inequities, everything. Like, I could sit here and tell you stories all day, but I know that that's what really sparked my interest in working with community. Was that it? Was there another? Okay.
So my name is Joaquin. I go by Joaquin Muerte. I am a community health worker, community activist. I'm also a creator, musician, podcaster. I do a lot of different things. And I brought my camera because I'm also a photographer, and I haven't used it at all. So maybe we could scratch that one. The way that I got into this work was I was born and raised in community organizing. My parents were, my father was an old, he ran lowrider car clubs, and my mother was a Brown Beret, and when I was born, I immediately jumped into community organizing. The minute that I can leave the hospital and be out in the community, I was put into a basket and put into the community. My mom had to go find me amongst all the organizers that they were doing work with. My first job, so currently I am a community organizer, community outreach specialist, community outreach coordinator with the Health Confianza program with the Office of UT, Office of Medical Humanities and Ethics. And my first job was digging ditches with a man named Chilo, his feet didn't work, so he was really good at digging ditches because he sat at the edge of the dirt and would just go like this for a long time, and he needed help, so my father said, well, you're gonna work for him. And I think I quit first week, man, it was hard. That was my first job.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tia Gibson. Thank you. My first job, I think I've always been an entrepreneur. I find seats at the table when no one gives me seats at the table. So I literally asked my mom, can I draw on t-shirts? I would always draw like cartoon characters and I would draw them on paper. So my mom was like, you're really good at that. I said, so if I draw on a t-shirt and I give it to you and take it to work, can you raffle it off? And she said, she was like, that's a good idea. Yeah, I could do that. So I said, okay, I'm gonna give you 3 t-shirts. One had Snoopy, one was Garfield or something, and then there was something that I had drew, just something that I liked. And she literally sold all 3 of the t-shirts. I think I made like $300 off raffles. So that was my first job. Then I realized I'm an entrepreneur. Now I am the proud founder of Monster Moms. And thank you. And Monster Moms is a nonprofit. We work predominantly with our women and our girls just to empower them and give them the things that they need. In schools, they weren't able to have like feminine hygiene products. We make sure that we give that to the schools and give it to the girls when they are going to schools. We also give it to their families, and we work for our houseless prevention, so we give it to our houseless prevention families as well. When it comes to education, I felt like education was the way out of poverty. And that's the way, that I grew up. We never really realized that we were in poverty. My mother and my grandmother always kept us strong and showed us that they were great leaders, so we wanted to be the same thing, and we never realized that we really lived smack then in the middle of the hood, right? But it didn't matter because my mom would always tell us we live inside our home. You stay safe when you go outside, but you live inside your home. So that's the same things that I instill when it comes to my young entrepreneurs, and my beautiful youths, and all the different educational classes that we give along with financial management. And yeah, that's me and Monster Moms. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Avila. Thank you. Hi. I am the Professional Development Coordinator with the Community Health Worker Hub at Metro Health. I came into this role, I think it's something that I've just always done, has worked in the community. And Joaquin actually told me that there was a job that was right up my alley. I didn't believe him. I never saw myself working for the local health department. And it has been a blessing in disguise. It's everything that I love to do. I always joke that I'm 4'11", so it's like the information right 411. Everybody used to come and ask me for information on, where can we apply for rental assistance or where are there food pantries, and it's just the role that I've always taken in my community. Let's see, my first job, the first thing I got a paycheck for, we'll do that, was I was so excited. I was asked to take part in the dance company to do a performance. So I did a folklorico dance, and I got like $30 to dance one dance. And I was like, I can do this, right? And now I want to be a professional folklorico dancer. Didn't happen. I'm working at Metro Health now, and I'm glad you all are spending your afternoon with us here today. So thank you.
Great, thank you all. All right, let's dive right in. I want to open it up by first sort of level setting the definition of health equity. When you think of health equity, how do you talk about it? What does it sound like? What does it look like? And I want to hear from all of you, so I'm trying to see who would be ready, please. Yeah, sure, Monica, please.
So I think for me, and Joaquin can attest to this, I have issues with, those buzzwords. Equity and decolonize and racial justice and all the stuff that's out there in the media that gets us those grants, right? And so to me, what I try to practice is just what's right. And so if you're asking me what health equity looks like, it looks like just doing the right thing, plugging people to the resources without being an additional barrier or an obstacle for them.
All right, other thoughts on doing just what is right?
I think I can piggyback off of that. I feel the same way. I feel like health equity would be, for me, just creating, just creating the things that our people in our community actually need. Not using those buzzwords. They're very much annoying, and I get tired of hearing equity and and health, and putting it together makes absolutely no sense because that's not what we see as a community, right? So we want to try to do everything that we can by allowing our community to be acknowledged, allowing them to be able to speak and tell you what it is that they need so that we can create those things instead of doing the same things that are not working.
Okay. Yes, 100% with you on that. The buzzwords, in any situation for me, the overuse of those words is always just, it's so frustrating, right? And for me, I always, when I look at health equity, I look at what we're helping others get. Are we asking them what they need, right? And not just that, but advocating for them in spaces where there's people that don't understand on the ground level what they're dealing with, right? And it's always the academics or people that are in higher positions that don't exactly get what it's like to be in these communities. And I think in our positions, we have the power to give them that knowledge, right? They might never experience what it's like to live in the communities we grew up in, but I can attest to him, right? He's in a position where he actually translates for our community when it comes to talking to doctors. And so I think for all of us, and for me especially, I constantly have to advocate for the space that I'm working in, right? And why it's important, not just for the city, but for the Black community. And I think there's been times where people question that space, and I'm like, magic doesn't happen overnight. For us, it's a constant battle. Every year there's challenges. COVID, there's all kinds of things happening that get in our way, and it makes our jobs harder. But I'm still here, and I'm so proud to be on this stage with these people because we are just a small representation of all the people that are in this space that have to constantly advocate and actually build that health equity for our communities. So.
One time when I was traveling through New Orleans, because we were doing this thing called the Environmental Violence Tour, and we were talking about how environmental extraction is showing up as a violent act and setting an example for our communities, and our communities are acting in violence because our environment is being trashed, right, by extraction companies, oil refineries, especially when you're coming from New Orleans to Texas. You see it all along there, right? And so we were driving by the projects, and I was just like, oh, you cross the tracks and there's the project. You cross the tracks and there's a project. And this young guy from New Orleans he works for a program that's called Eliminating Racism says, oh, we don't like to call it the projects around here. We like to call it the power dynamic. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, and it took me a minute to grasp what he meant, right? And he said, these people that are living in this power dynamic have lived in this type of environment for so long. Imagine if you gave them all the things they needed to thrive. These would be the most powerful people that you would have in the United States, in the world. They experience this day-to-day existence of surviving in what is known as the projects. And so imagine them having all the things they need to thrive. And he said they would run the world. They would run this country in the way that they knew. So for me, that's the definition of equity.
Well, I've lived a life that's been oblivious to inequity for a long time. I worked for a large company. We traveled all over the nation. And since I've worked for an insurance company, I've got to see a lot of disasters, a lot of devastation. But I never really dealt with another part of society until I moved. I became a pastor at a large church in Dallas where, pardon the expression, white flight had occurred in the 70s. And so it was an area of East Dallas where at one time it had been mostly Anglos or well-to-do people in that area. We had immigrants and migrants and basically people that couldn't find anywhere else to live had moved into these apartments. And didn't really realize until we had a community leader, one of the ladies at one of the schools, and our church would give for Thanksgiving in an effort to relate to the community. We would give them turkeys and we would give them all kinds of the fixins, so to speak, so that they could celebrate Thanksgiving like us. And so we believe we gave out like 75 turkeys and all the fixings and everything else for those folks. And so people very graciously, said thank you and we appreciated everything else. And so the community liaison of one of the elementary schools or learning centers there came by and said, hey, I'm going to go make some visits. Would you like to go with me? I said, sure. So we went over to the apartments of some of these folks, and so they welcomed me in, and we talked and everything else. I told them our church is there. I was the first non-Anglo pastor, by the way, at that church. And so what happened was, as she took me out, she says, did you see the apartments? I said, yeah, they're pretty small. And she goes, did you see their kitchen? I said, yeah. She goes, what did you see in their kitchen? I said, well, there was an all-in-one, 2 burners, a refrigerator, and a sink. And she goes, so what do you think they cooked those turkeys? And it helped me realize that we were doing what we thought they needed, but they couldn't use any of that stuff. So immediately I went to the church. I said, you know what? Next year we're doing this different. We're going to cook and we're going to invite them in. That's when we became a part of that community. Because up to that point, we were this church, an island in the middle of a community. And then I began to realize also that these folks' everyday life was a struggle because they didn't have access to health care. Parkland Hospital was where they had to go, the emergency room. And the emergency rooms were just flooded. And the community was like, well, what do we do? Because our emergency rooms, these people are taking up all our space. So they were having problems, but they were being, blamed as being part of the problem. And that's when a friend of mine began to show me some things at Baylor Hospital, and I began to see things differently. And I didn't realize how our community immediately around us was completely different from us. And it wasn't their fault. I was part of the problem because by not knowing, I wasn't seeing. So that's where I realized we live in different worlds, even though we're neighbors. Some of us have such need, and others, we just kind of go by them every day without paying attention. So that's why I'm a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you all. Jovanna, I want to pick on what you were saying. I want to move to language, semantics, insulting, overused, annoying, Tia, right? Annoying words. Health equity, I hear that loud and clear. Projects, power dynamic. I wrote that down.
That's being like culturally insensitive.
Culturally insensitive. Okay. So I'm going to hear a little bit more about language and specifically around what's misunderstood, what's most misunderstood about the work that you're all doing, regardless of what we talk, how we frame it, how we reference it. But let's talk about other misunderstandings, language or otherwise.
I think a lot of that language within the community of health, CHWs especially, right? I think it's weaponized a lot against one another when there should be a lot of grace and understanding that we're all learning every day. Every day, this work is a learning experience, right? One day you didn't know something that you know the next day. And so I think we have to be a lot more understanding with one another that we're all at different places, right? And we're all learning every single day. And so while one of us sees, everybody's idea of equity up here was very different, right? And so just because your idea of equity is one way doesn't mean that other people don't see equity, right? We all perceive things differently. And I think for me, in my experience, that language has been weaponized. And it's frustrating because we all need to be helping each other out and understanding where that's coming from, right? Like where we are in that language. So I think for me, that's where it hits for me, so.
Others?
I wanted to just also think about capital and worth, because a lot of our community who don't use these words will find them offensive because people who have more worth that is equal in capital, right? So people who make more money, and that's where they're seen more important using these words. In our community, we have our leaders who don't use these words, right? And may not know how to even really work within health equity or work within social justice even, right? Like, because sometimes social justice in our community is a very educated concept. But we know how to survive in our communities. And that isn't equal to, it isn't equal to capital worth, but it equals to our social values. And sometimes for us, especially as a community health worker, that is worth more than money, right? That is where we actually really survive. And so, I had a conversation with a good friend, and the question came up about how much money do you think that people should deserve? And I was just like, let's get rid of that concept, right? Where's our land? Where's the land that we have, that we've come? So as an indigenous person, how can I determine what I want to do for self, for myself, for my people, for my communities? And if that means growing food, then that, for me, that language, that education is more worth than any paycheck that I can receive. Now, this is the other thing though. I realize that some people are like, no, I need to get paid. And so in the realm of that, in the realm of getting paid, the community health workers and the people on the ground should be receiving the most.
I want to say something. For me, it's, and I'm going to be quite honest because I don't know any other way to be. It's deep-rooted in racism. It's almost like that it's so comfortable and it's so easily said that everybody gets used to it. That doesn't mean that it's okay. You know, it's just like he was saying, like we were helping and we thought that we were doing something, right, really good. But were you listening to the community? Were you acknowledging them? Did you ask them, is this something that they wanted? And that's the thing that a lot of people don't do. A lot of agencies don't do. They feel like, even when she said about the grants, they feel like, oh, you know what? This will be really good to get a grant. But where's your passion? Because the CHWs that work on the ground, that's the difference. The people that are in high places writing grants don't have a passion. They haven't had a conversation. They've never been through these things that the community is going through. So how would you know how to help them? You're getting money to do what?
I think for me, I see the level of disconnect between institution and community. And so a lot of times we build up our resume, we build our education to fit within the model of the institutional structures, right? And while it's great, I always go back to drop your letters in the community, but nobody cares, right? You're worried about the day-to-day, you're worried about functioning, you're worried about where you're gonna get your next meal, maybe some clean water, access to healthcare services. And so, because there still is that disconnect, a lot of times from what I've seen, institution doesn't value community's knowledge. And so they aren't co-constructors of creating what needs to be done. The assessments aren't being made. There are false promises being given back to our communities, or we might conduct a survey, but there's no outcome after the survey. And so then you get the community members saying, here come the researchers again, right? And there's no follow through. We didn't see what happened. And so until we can bridge that gap or create space for community members to truly be appreciated for the knowledge that they carry, I don't see anything changing.
Eddie, do you have anything to add?
For me, the value of walking in with other people, where they live, where they are, the things that they face is important. And so after that experience, I began to realize the inequity in so many different ways that people were dealing with in Dallas. And of the total of 14 churches that we worked together of the East Dallas Cooperative Parish, I was the only non-Anglo in that area, in that whole realm. So I began to meet with folks and bring back to the rest of the folks what the experience of these folks were. And I said, a lot of these guys that you see as simple immigrants, some of them had degrees in the country that they came from. Some of them were very educated. And I said, and I began to look into their eyes. I said, you know, when I look at the experience of Jesus, I don't know if some of y'all are watching that program, The Chosen, but as you see him walking with these 12 or 14 different people of different experiences and having to deal with the personalities, it reminded me of my walk with these folks. And sometimes you would see them as angry, but they're not angry at you. They're angry at the system. They're angry at so many other things that are happening to them. And they feel like victims, regardless of where they go, even people that purport to help them. So to me, as I walked in their shoes, I realized that we used to call them immigrants back then, the immigrants in that community, they suffered in every single aspect. Whether they bought a car, they got taken advantage of. And a lot of them, because they wanted to be invisible, wouldn't sign a lease. So I would charge you $600 a month, first month, last month, and plus what's left of this month. And then you'd go, okay, but I remain invisible. Oh, don't you worry, you'll be invisible. And then a few months later, you'd come in with your $600 cash, and it's like, well, dude, it's gone up to $750. And the purpose was for that landlord to rent that apartment out to 3 or 4 different people. And so they made lots of money. And I began to realize, wow, you talk about beyond unfair. And that's why, to me, something like this is so important, because it affects their health. Anything emotionally affects you. And so I would see people that are chronically in worry. And children, somebody mentioned earlier how children, a lot of these folks, wind up being the prime translator for their parents. So they have to grow up. And children that are 10, 11 years of age are worried about financial problems. Those are things that just broke my heart. And that's why I think as we talk about all this stuff, that we understand it's such a wide issue. And of course, none of us can ever do it alone, but we can begin to give insight to one another as to what somebody else is dealing with.
Okay, well, that's a perfect jumping off point. I want to have all of us hear the work that you're all doing. So, and a little bit shift to asset focus, because the work matters. You're asking people what they need. You're meeting folks where they are. All these lessons learned. While I hear that we have a lot of work to do around the disconnect of community to institutions, you can talk about that, as well as language, et cetera. But I want each of you to share maybe a little highlight or two about the work that you are doing, and also how you, another word I know is controversial, but measure that, or how do you communicate that to folks that are not in your day-to-day world? Perhaps it seems like that, yeah, that makes a little more sense. How about we rephrase our own questions, my questions? So could you share a little bit? So highlight, show off, boast, and also about how you communicate that, whether it's a board, a funder, et cetera. Whoever would like to start. Joaquin, I appreciate it.
I'll start, because so we had this thing called health clubs. Health clubs were, in so many different ways, was an organizing process that I had visited before. I had learned how to build health clubs, quote unquote health clubs, in my community in the barrio with some social justice activist organizers from before. So it was a familiar work, but one of the things that I did was I built trust with the community by just showing up. And for me, it meant saying nothing for maybe 2 or 3 months, but showing up to do the work. If that meant carrying food boxes into people's cars, that's what it meant. If it meant shoveling dirt from one pile to another, that's what it meant. I look at Jovanna because she made me do some shoveling. And then it meant doing it over and over again several times until they say, what do you do? Why are you here so much? Why do you have so much time? And then I was able to introduce the concept of the health clubs, and then I would have their attention, but it was like really, really allowing that moment and that time. How did I report that? That's still a good question. No, but there was a progress report of relationships. And I was the one that was being checked, right? Although I was saying like, oh yeah, like I think that they're letting me, I think that they want to be a part of the club soon, that kind of thing. And it would be little things like, I'll say a really good example. I had mentioned to one of my clubs that I was building, and we hadn't called it a club yet, that I would end a daily fast when I got to there. So as soon as I was done with this health club, I would go and eat. And so I got to the health club, or at the time it was just building the health club, and this one lady says, "Hey, I'm glad you're here. We brought you a taco." And she said, "We know you don't eat, a lot of meat, and so it's the nopal taco on corn, And I was like, "All right." And I was like, "I think I told you that I fasted before while I was here," but she was like, "Go ahead." take a bite. And so like, it was like, all right. And so like, I felt almost as if after I took the bite, they were just like, he's in. Come on, sit down, And so I always tell folks that like, for me, the little progress report was that, dude, this lady, when she was making that taco that morning, she was like, this one's for Joaquin. I was in, man. Health Club was signed, man. Yeah. Then it was about introducing the curriculum later.
If I may, Joaquin, I just want to link that, though, back to your earlier comment about capital. And that time that you sat quietly, months, that's time. That's your time. That's how it's done. So to quantify that, to get paid for that, to reflect it in progress report, I just want to underscore that connects as an example, if that makes sense, to exactly what you're talking about. Thank you.
Okay. So I came onto my position because I specifically wanted to work at the farm in the neighborhood that it is in, right? It's on the east side off of East Commerce and Garcia Street near the AT&T Center. And I think the zip code 78220. And there's so many statistics from that neighborhood. I'm not gonna go through them, but they're a community that is very much in need, right? And so I don't know if it was intentional where they put the farm, but I'm glad that that's where it's at, right? Because it's made my job challenging, but I like the challenge, right? And so I think for the one thing I would love to brag about that space is that we've created this very strong bond with the AME churches in that community. They would come and learn how to build out rows and harvest and learn about different produce. And I will tell you also is that a lot of that produce that we grow, we ask people that come through there, they're from the community, what do you want to see growing here, right? And so we always make sure to have culturally conscious we're culturally conscious about what we grow in that space. And so with AME, we decided, well, you know what? After the pandemic, it was just such a dire situation of people that didn't have food and didn't have a lot of resources. And so AME decided, you know what? We want to build spaces similar to yours in our churches. And the one thing, I don't know if it's all churches, but AME churches specifically always have a lot of land behind their churches, right? And so we've already built one at the Emmanuel Church, and I think they're close to 1,000 pounds of produce that they've produced in the last 2 seasons. The pictures, I wasn't there at the harvest, but they sent me all the pictures, and it makes me very emotional because to see the joy on their face knowing that they're able to take power in feeding their community and being able to push that out, to their residents. I'm very proud of them, right? Because we all did it together, but they didn't need us there for harvest. They didn't need us there to put things in the ground because they came to our space to learn. And they have that tool to pass on to their congregates and their community now. So that's one of my biggest things with my job, right? And I will say, I think you were talking about grants earlier, and I think for me, I'm really bad at keeping metrics of volunteers, and I'm always getting in trouble for it. Because I don't care. You show up that day, we're gonna go plant seeds or we're gonna harvest tomatoes today, right? I don't even think about you as a volunteer. I think about you as a community member that decided to show up today and just enjoy nature with me, right? Because the days I am out there, I'm in nature. And I always tell people, I'm not a very religious person, but for me, my closest connection to our Creator is being in that space and being in nature. And so I always try to convey that to whoever's there, right? I always try to be, oh, look, there's a bird, or look at this bug, or let me explain this flower to you, right? And so where was my point with that? I do not like to keep metrics, and I know I'm being forced to do it now, but there's a huge disconnect between the institution that I work for and the space that I am working in, right? I think and I know this is recorded and I hope I don't get fired, but there's always been these conversations of let's take this resource out because it's not serving anybody. And I'm like, can you please come for a volunteer day so that I can show you how much it serves people, right? We have people show up from up the block, they're like, I need collards today, do y'all have collards? And most of the time we give it to them, right? Because our revenue is made with cut flowers. I think that's another beautiful thing that the community is learning about as a business too, as a possibility to grow in their backyard. And so I don't know, I'm super proud of the work we've done on a very small staff, even with the disconnect of institution, and the challenges I've faced of having to defend this space and why it's important on a very small staff. And funding, right? I think funding is one of the biggest things that you see within these organizations. Like everybody thinks I'm out there having fun and just in nature, when in the background, we're having to figure out how to keep this space and keep this resource and constantly prove our value within our institution. And it's super hard, but man, I will tell you that if I died tomorrow, I would die content knowing that I connected with so many people in that community, right? Because they know we're there, and we're not always there because there's not a lot of us, but man, they will text me the moment they see anybody creeping by the property. They will always text me, and I tell them, you text me whenever you want. If somebody's out there, let me know. And most of them will go out there and tell people that drive by, like, what are you doing here? Are you here for something, you know? And so it's beautiful to have that relationship with that community surrounding it because, man, you know you're doing something right when they're willing to protect a space that for them is very sacred, so.
Anyone else? Oh, yeah.
So I
Monica.
think for me, I'm horrible about the metrics too. Our poor epi person she probably wants to strangle me every week. And I always tell her, I don't care about the numbers. If we're doing the work, those numbers are secondary, right? They'll get there. And then I've kind of forced her to think about it differently too, right? Like while we want that quantitative data, the qualitative data is what we need as well to tell the full story and to tell the full picture. So, capturing those testimonials. And because my program is one of the newer ones, we've been technically up and running for a year, although maybe the past 6 months, we've actually been full force. The stuff that's not captured are those little personal stories of somebody going through the program, but now their daughter's enrolled in college because they saw that they were able to do it. Or now they're gonna pursue an associate's degree, or they're considering another career, or they've applied for a different position, right? And so those are things that my program doesn't care if we capture that or not, because that's not what the grant is asking for, right? They wanna know how many people we're training. But that's the stuff that's important to me. And so when I'm working with anybody, they come to me for resources. I don't overpromise. That's a big one for me. I don't overpromise, but if you're coming to me for help, it can be about anything, and it doesn't have to just be about what my position wants me to help for. And so that's where I do turn into that 411, right? And it's like, I might need resources for X, Y, and Z, and I don't care what time of the day or night it is. And so for me, it's building that relationship with my community, giving back, and then serving as the community health worker for the community health workers. So I try to be that bridge for our institution and then our frontline workers. So that's mine.
Anybody else? See ya?
Me. I think my best results and answers and quantitative is pretty much from my community. When I see them succeeding and I see them thriving instead of just surviving, that for me is enough. And I don't want to start crying because that's how passionate I am about it. Like, I have been through each and everything that they have been through. I stand here as a Black woman. I have been through domestic violence. I have been through homelessness. I have been through pretty much everything that they have been through. I've been through, being with my children and not having food, to us owning a company to where we can be able to help other people. That means everything to me. So when people are able to tell me that them getting a grant, I'm going back to it, and them serving my community is not serving my community, that's a problem for me. Because I know for a fact that I had to build this table that we're sitting at so I could serve my community. So who's partnering with me? Because the only way we get results is through them thriving. When I have moms that come to me from other states, California, other parts of Texas that I can't pronounce, and tell me that they are fleeing. They've been through a domestic violence situation. How can I help them? If there's not something that I can do, I will forward them to what they can get done. And when I say that they walk out of my office feeling empowered, I can't say it's me. It's gotta be a higher power, because I literally just speak from my heart. And when I can see them come out of a situation like that, and within a couple of months, I mean, literally coming from another part of Texas or another state and coming here pretty much homeless, living out of their car with their children, to actually being able to have a job, now volunteering with Monster Moms, and now they actually are helping me. We're healing the healers. The healers are helping the healers. That, to me, shows me that I'm working within my purpose and I'm doing what I need to do for my community. If numbers is what they need, then I'll hire somebody to do numbers, because that's not me. I don't have time for the numbers. I have time to see change. I'm a changer. I need to challenge things. I need to see that things are being challenged and changed. I need to execute. And if that's not what I'm doing when I'm getting these grants or I'm getting money or I'm having people come and volunteer, if I can't show them that I'm capable of executing, then that means that I would have no purpose. But I know that I serve a purpose because the people that come to me, they serve a purpose. And that's how we're able to create a change.
Well, I'm required to do a report every week, and so I have to do one. But if you ever stop and ask yourself, what does a chaplain do besides talk and pray and listen? Well, I'll tell you what, thanks to one of the people here, Gracie, she sent me a list of some of the confianza folks that participate. And so what happens is, I was sharing with somebody, I said, I've never liked cell phones. They always ring at the wrong time. But the thing is that I love cell phone now, because what happens is that list, I've been able to use it, and so that when I show up, everybody knows that my little black book doesn't have names of who aren't gonna make it to heaven or something. It's got names of the people, of the resources in the area. And it changed everything for me in that ministry, because when you show up and people are waiting for you in the parking lot and going, hey, I need you to talk to this guy because he's having issues, and you gave me some names or something, but I don't remember which one's which, and I'm able to give them, they take pictures of the websites or the phone numbers or whatever, and then I ask them, look, if something doesn't work for you, let me know so that we can change it up or find out what's going on with this. And people come back to me with their success stories. Hey, guess what? I didn't realize we qualified for this. I didn't realize this was going on. I'd never heard of this before. It's like, well, I hadn't either. But now you're able to give them something that they can hang on to, or even refer to others, or people come up to you and say, hey, you know, you gave information to her and she gave it to me, and so on and so forth. And that's really important. And especially, I went through COVID a few years ago, and even though I have health care and everything else, you know, it's hard to be heard of some of the things that I was dealing with as I went through COVID. I didn't get full-blown sick. I didn't have a respirator or anything like that, but my body was changing, and nobody believed me. And it was hard. I mean, people were not hearing me. And that's one thing that also has allowed me to be a better listener to the people that I deal with. And so sometimes in listening, you lose track of the numbers. And like we said before, the numbers just aren't that important until the following time that you see people and they say, hey, thank you. Thank you. And that's where I'm at with all that.
I just want to give a shout out to all the epidemiologists and data collectors and the folks. Thank you. I keep telling people about the opposite of goosebumps. You know, when someone says like, oh, that gave me goosebumps, but the stress bumps, you might be getting some of those as we continue on.
This is, I wish we had so much more time. I want to do, though, a quick rapid question, if I may. before we go to the audience. Future, how do you envision the future? Next several years, the next decade, you can define it, but let's look into the future. We talked about all this incredible work, the incredible barriers, the problems, but what's the future hold? Monica?
I think for me, that's like a loaded question, right? Because I don't live that far out. You know, we have to
Fair.
focus on now to be able to have that impact and change. And so for me, if you're gonna ask me the future, I'm thinking about our next cohort of community health workers, right? Like short-term future. And it's enrolling more people, getting those frontline workers out there, but also having, you know, people in positions of leadership understand the value and the worth of that workforce. So that's
Thank you.
where I'm at.
Yeah, define future, however, fair enough. Thank you.
For the future of Monster Moms, not Tia, Monster Moms. Well, for the future of Monster Moms, I see Monster Moms, and I always project it out, and everything that I manifest has come to pass. I see Monster Moms being nationwide. I always, in my mind, I already have 3 states in which I want to be in, and I want to be able to serve my communities in which I'm needed. If there's a back-to-school event, I live here, but I've done back-to-school events in Austin. If I need to go to Houston, wherever I'm needed, that's where I want to be able to go. I want to be able to have foundations in each one of those places to where we can not only just encourage and empower our moms and our girls, now everyone. We want to be able to also educate them and put them in a place where they now can take care of their families, whichever that may be, through being a CHW, or whatever it is that they may want to put them in the right direction, or even Monster Moms, just educating them and giving them the needs of the day.
I see, like Monica was saying, like it's hard for me to look to the future when it's like all happening right in front of me. There's a couple things. I could already see the value of CHWs going up as a workforce. It's growing, and I'm noticing how more institutions are seeing that work is so important, and they're hiring them. If you want to become a CHW, holler at me. The other one is good, or money. Yeah, but me first. The other one is. For real. So if you want to become a CHW, you have this group of people right here who can push forward for your education or even certification for that. Even if it means we just look to the website with you, right? The other one is I see health equity and equity becoming a recognized practice in all institutions. I still feel like there's a lot more to go with that. Although there's a lot of research behind it and a lot of people backing it up and big names, I don't see it implemented the way it could be in its most equitable. Equity could be more equitable in the places where equity is pushed. I'm hoping that's happening within the next 2 to 3 years.
For Ecocentro Garcia Street Farm, we are building a degree program right now, and we're kind of battling with whether it's going to be a sustainability, another buzzword I can't deal with, but a sustainability certificate/degree or urban farming. I think what's been great about being able to sit there and plan out those degree programs, even though I am not an academic, is that I've been able to input the CHW, like what's important to learn if people are gonna be urban farming, right? Because I think if you're gonna be growing within the inner city, you're gonna deal with your neighbors, right? People are gonna either buy from you or you're gonna barter. And so for me, a few things that I hope for in the future is we are trying to create a connection with the CHW program at Northwest Vista. Maybe eventually we'll become a district-wide resource, not just San Antonio College. And my other thing is that in the future, what I want for the farm is to be able to have a team of CHWs that goes out to community, right? Because it's just me. I'm the one that block walks, and I'll invite Metro Health's community health workers to come and help every season before our markets start so that the neighbors are aware that we have produce for sale. Or for if you just need produce. I give a lot more produce away than I sell it. Don't tell my boss. Because if there's a need and you need it, I'm gonna give it to you, right? So that's what I hope for.
Well, so far I've got several people that have asked about their continuing education, and they didn't realize that our company does offer some help with tuition and so on and so forth. So we've got some people that are asking some real questions. But for me right now, the most important thing is that they are able to share with one another freely some of the information that they've been getting from me. And knowing that sometimes when you don't hear anything, that's when you know that things are working. That's when they don't work, that you hear back from people. So I thank you all that are taking part in Confianza and have been doing the things that I didn't know you were doing. We pray for you guys, that you guys continue to be out in the field doing things that some of us can't do or don't want to do. But it's real. I mean, we all have something that we've been designed to do. God has created us with such different talents, and so it's always amazing to me to see people doing things that are just I had never even thought of before. So God bless each and every one of y'all. Thank you.
I know thank you so much.
I just want to say one thing.
Please.
So I just want to say one thing to everyone. I want to challenge you. I want you to go out into your community, your family, friends, and do something you are not used to doing. Whether that be start planting cucumbers or something that you love. Teach someone something. Go out and do something that's passionate from your heart. Even if you have to teach someone even a coping mechanism. If you paint, teach them how to paint without asking them for anything. Like literally do it from your heart. I want to challenge you because that's how you create change. You create change throughout the people that we speak to on an everyday basis. The conversations you don't usually have. The trauma that you don't talk about. That's how you create change. So I'm challenging y'all. Each and every one of y'all to do one thing for somebody else without charging.
Wow, thank you so much. How lucky are we to have such great panelists? And our wonderful moderator. Thank you, Sharon.